faster my, it's just after midday on Monday, Jaloon, the Anale Yeg Tajak Dari, the 12th day of the beginning of spring, according to the Manx calendar, or February to you and me. And this is Manx Radio's Mannin Line. It's me, Phil Gawne, hoping to provoke lively debate. A week tomorrow, we'll hear what Alex Allinson's budget has for us. Are you keen to pay more tax to cover the department overspends, or perhaps underfunds, depending on your perspective? Or perhaps you think we should cut government expenditure? This is your programme, though, so please call and ask some questions, or give opinions even. So, nobody on the line. No texts into the programme, so it's just me for the next hour by the look of things. Lots and lots that we could talk about. Obviously, the budget is coming up. There's some fairly significant issues on the Tynwald Order paper as well as the budget, but it's mainly about the budget. I was having a quick skeet through the Tynwald Order paper, and not the first item. The first item, obviously, main item is questions. Then the independent review of government's management of the Ranson case, a report to Tynwald by Richard Wright KC. The Chief Minister is going to make a statement on that. Then Manx Development Corporation, Dr. Allinson, Treasury Minister, is going to make a personal statement. So maybe he's not the Treasury Minister in that instance. So that's interesting. And then the much heralded supplementary capital authorities, additional budget and respect. It says capital authority, but this is revenue, I think. The next item is capital. I'm not quite sure why it's called capital authority. Anyway, the Minister for Treasury is going to move an additional budget of £8,900 to be spent for the Department of Education, Sport and Children. Well, they've already spent it, but they need Tynwald approval to have the money. An additional budget of 30 million in respect of Department of Health and Social Care for this year. An additional budget of 2.2 million for the Department of Home Affairs and 5.665 million for DOI. Bearing in mind that we had a fairly significant gap in public finances when the budget was announced last year, 150 million was required from reserves to top up the likely expenditure. It does seem a bit an extra. How much is there? 45 million quid to be spent on top of the 150 million gap that we already had. So, how is government going to pay for all this? Obviously, Dr. Allinson probably knows by now. It would be interesting to find out, are we all going to be paying more taxes? But we do have a few texts now, one of which says, who can afford to live on this island now? Money was in reserve for times like these, but as we know, government has spent it on rubbish. Shame on them all. Well, I'm not sure it's entirely fair to say it's been spent on rubbish. There's been quite a lot of good things as well, but certainly some excellent road schemes being done by the DOI lately. Certainly in the south of the island, there seem to be some pretty good schemes there. And then, hi Phil, so much for the green agenda when the sky is being so polluted from the deployment of chemicals from geoengineering sky rocketeers who are, where are we now? Where does it go from there? Who are wealthier harvesting. Wealth harvesting perhaps. Why do we allow this to happen over our heads? And that's from Manx Will. Well, I'm not entirely sure why we would, or how we would stop something like that happening. But anyway, no doubt if there's anyone listening who's doing this, perhaps they would be prepared to give us a call. Perhaps Elon Musk is listening in, knowing that I'm hosting the show today. And another one here. Good afternoon, Phil. Is there any statement from Steam Packet yet regarding the vibration on the Manxman? I'm not aware of any statement as yet. If anyone listening in the newsroom is aware, perhaps they could let me know, but I'm not aware of that. And then another text in. Dear Manx Radio, can we opt out of the national payment scheme? The golden wallet spend is out of control. I will pay my own doctors and dentists and my bin to be emptied every 2 weeks. Well, no, you can't opt out. I'm assuming what you mean there is the national payment scheme, national insurance scheme perhaps, or taxation. Regardless, national insurance, taxation rates, these are all effectively taxes, and unless you are exempt for some particular reason, you have to pay them all, regardless of what you think of the government. And of course, your opportunity to say what you think about the government comes along every 5 years, and you can, and I can, a perfect demonstration of this. You can remove your members of the House of Keys at election time. So there is that opportunity. Now then, I'm doing that thing of using the wrong mouse, so let's try a different mouse. That one works. Phil, Moramai, please, where can Joe Public see what is being proposed in the budget, so have opportunity to tell their representatives how they should use the electors' vote? Well, of course, the answer to that one is you can't. Your elected representatives have already had a briefing of what's in the budget, but they are sworn to secrecy. I think the media at some point, possibly towards the end of this week, will get a briefing as well. But no one is allowed to tell you what's in the budget until the Treasury Minister actually gets up and finishes delivering his speech on Budget Day, which of course is a week tomorrow, which some MHKs, certainly Ewan Watterson is probably at the forefront of this, suggests that maybe there should be some reform of the budget process, because effectively members don't have the opportunity to discuss with their constituencies what's in the budget in advance of the budget being made. So your elected members have to, I suppose, second guess what you think. Do you actually, are you likely to support, for example, a significant hike in taxation? Not that I know anything about this, and not that it's going to happen, but I'm guessing members would probably err on the side of caution when it comes to significant increases in tax, and probably not err on the side of caution when it comes to ensuring that good public services are funded. But then what is a good public service? This is, of course, the question which often causes debate on the Mannin Line. Sadly, no callers as yet. No one seems keen to light up the switchboard, but there are still a few messages here. It costs an extra £1,000 to service your electronic car over here to send away. They don't tell you that when you buy one. Well, certainly I haven't bought one, so I wouldn't know about that. And then DOI, what's happening with the basics, i.e. road line marking? Well, to be fair, I think latterly the DOI, certainly in the areas that I'm driving, seem to have been doing quite a big job on the basic stuff of fixing roads. But I see that I've provoked John Tier to say, "Hi Phil, the road up to Manx Radio is in need of resurfacing. It is diabolical. You must be all shook up driving up there every day." And he is right. It is a bit of a bad one, that. But a lot of roads about the island are getting sorted. And yes, I've made the cardinal error. Thank you to texter ending 338. When you referenced DESC, the C is culture, not children. An easy mistake to make. It used to be the Department of Education and Children, and then it's changed to the Department of Education, Sport and Culture. And of course, if you go back far enough, it was the Board of Education. However, we do now have two callers, one of which is Julian. So hopefully I'll remember which levers to press. Julian, are you there? Obviously not yet. So Julian, hang on. We'll keep trying to work this one out. Oh, yes. Julian, are you there? Yes. Marvellous.
I'm here. How are you?
Good. And you want to talk about wind farms?
Only just a quick one on scale of Erie Stain. It just occurs to me, if you go from, say, the sea terminal to Athol Street, which is about a third of a mile, and then you turn up and you go up to Rosemount Terrace, and then you drive down to the Empress, and then you go back to the sea terminal. You've got a rectangle, which is about the same size as Erie Stain. You're going to have to put in that area 5 Blackpool towers with massive arms on, or actually about 45 foot bigger and about 60 foot taller than the London Eye. 5 of them. That's your scale, if you're thinking about what's this going to look like.
And yet, government will, and you know, I should declare that I have a personal interest in this, in that I'm, yes, my view will certainly be affected by this, but I'll not say one way or the other what I think about it. But government's view is that we need to have renewable energy. If we had renewable energy, if it had a wind farm or some other form of renewable energy back 5 or 10 years ago, then perhaps the significant cost increases in relation to gas and, of course, electricity would have been mitigated against because we would have had our own renewable energy, which wouldn't rely on international markets for oil and gas. So presumably it's not all bad.
Well, that supposition relies on computer modelling based on nothing that's come out of reality. I mean, the Wind Consortium, my website itself says that the average capacity factor, or the amount of time that wind farms are running, is 4 times less than the calculation that the government are telling us. So, I mean, you know, I'm going to take the Wind Consortium's honest opinion from their own website, renewableuk.com. I mean, you know, if they're telling us, and this is SSE Renewables, Ørsted, RWE, the largest electrical provider in the UK, incidentally, the one that is refusing to give bids to Ørsted because they want massive amounts of increase in electrical charges to people, which nobody's going for. You know, what is this based on? I mean, we're having this sort of blanket thing saying, oh, we would have saved money. Well, where's the reality of this? Let's have a look at the workings in the margin, if you remember O-levels, Phil.
So why would, I mean, I'm sure government won't have just made this up. They must have got these figures from somewhere.
No quotation. Where are they getting their figures from?
Well,
I mean, we hear about, oh, you know, they're getting X amount from the Shetlands, except that the Shetlands wind farm hasn't turned a blade yet because they've had 20 years of litigation, even from the council itself, but then got overridden by the Scottish government to ram them in. Even the RSPB was up in arms about the Wimborne breeding grounds getting churned up for the turbines. So, and you know, the calculation, we're talking about CO2. I've just been looking at a paper which is saying that moss absorbs 6 times more CO2 than normal grass does. Well, go and have a walk up at Erie Stain Plantation. There's so much moss up there. I mean, you can barely walk on the place without walking on moss. So that alters the calculation for how much you're saving on CO2 emissions from these turbines if you're digging up a plantation that not only has lots of trees that absorb CO2, but also the moss itself. And I haven't got a problem with CO2. The more the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I'm sure if there is anyone from government listening, it would be great to hear your views. I'm sure there is always a counter-argument to every argument. But thanks for that, Julian. And we'll now turn to Howard. And hopefully I've worked out how to do this. Yes, I have. Look at this. Howard, welcome.
Hi, Phil. No, just listen to Julian now, just the latter end of it. People remember, the older people, myself included, when they used to dig for peat up on the mountain, up on Benny Pot, etc., and you'd see it up there drying. And that was essentially thousands of years of moss compressed into a fossil fuel, in a sense. And the government decided, in their wisdom, that we're not going to have it anymore because of, the destruction of the habitats and the CO2s and various other aspects. In the farming industry, they're saying now they're not going to plough fields. They're just going to harrow it and sow seed straight into the top, so they're not releasing the CO2 that's contained in the ground. This CO2 seems to be the be-all, end-all. But then the next swipe, they're going to go up into a heathland where there's mosses, peats, and an unknown structure underneath, absorbing water and moisture, etc., on the headlands, which nature's done for many, many years, and dig damn big holes in it and fill it full of concrete.
And yet, government tells us that this is the only site that wasn't peatland. That's why they chose this site.
Well, why is everybody else saying up round there, and the forestation, etc., where it is peatland, heathland, and a lot of the higher ground is heathland, and it's nature's reserve. And why would the plants and the heath absorb CO2 if it wasn't of use to them? If it was a toxic chemical or something of that nature, which the government had determined to put into the water, fluoride, then it would be obnoxious. But it's disappeared into the ground, and right up until recently, they were praising the fact that the marshlands were absorbing all this CO2. But now they want to destroy the area by digging damn big holes out. Somebody said they're going to have to go down about 30-odd foot. Not going to dig a big hole, it'll be a borehole, obviously. But the amount of concrete that'll have to go around each one is a steadying factor. Because you know yourself, if you hold one of these little hand windmills, at the end of the stick, it wobbles when it's turning. So you've got to have something substantial on the blunt end of it to hold it steady while the blades go round on top. And they're not going to just put a little piddly bit of cement up there, and the roads they're going to have to dig up to it.
Well,
but that's beside.
I would obviously I've got lots that I could say about all this, but I have to remain impartial, and that's what I'm endeavouring to do. According to my producer, you were also wanting to talk about the post office.
Yes, just a little while ago there were people on, and they were saying they were trying to run a postal business, email business, a mail business through the post. Well, I went down on Friday night to the post box in Annacore. Now, we bear in mind the post office is also there in the shop, but that closes at tea time. It says here, Friday night, wanted to post a letter, 7 o'clock, a collection. There's not another collection until Monday night at 7 o'clock. And then, so that's, if you miss the Friday night post, it says Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, and won't be picked up till 5 o'clock Monday, which, unless it goes out on the early morning boat, it's not going to go out until Tuesday night time. So by the time it gets into the UK and gets waddled around there in their little system, you're going to be Wednesday and Thursday. Now, what sort of system is that operating here on the island? A small island where there's only one collection a day, 1,700 hours.
But isn't part of the problem?
This morning off the post box.
Yeah, isn't part of the problem though that effectively a huge swathe of the population now send messages by electronic form, email, texts, all these different apps that are available. And this is the problem. The post office can't compete with that, and people are sending less and less by way of post.
I don't disagree with that. That is an obvious thing where the method is changing. It used to be Pony Express, and then we went on to the post office. Now it's changing all the time. But to make a long weekend like that, from Friday night tea time until Monday night tea time, before your letter will even be picked up from the letterbox. Why can't, even if somebody just pops around these places and it can go back up to the sorting office, unless there's no sorting office staff up there must be somebody, and they were supposed to have bought one of the all singing and dancing sorting machines. I notice outside, if you go up to the cool of the post box, there used to be internal mail and UK and others. There was 2 post boxes, now there's just the one. So obviously they've got their system sorted out inside, but they've just forgotten the post boxes. And it must be not just in Douglas, must be all over the island, a similar system. Because this one's got, 58 Annika Post Office. That's the number of the post box.
Right.
And it's been blanked out for Monday, so there's no collection out of that post box until 5 o'clock Monday evening.
Well,
it's, it means I sent a card off to a friend of mine up in Scotland, and I posted it on the Friday night because I only found out he was in hospital then, and he didn't get it till the following Wednesday, which is a long time in anybody's language.
It is indeed. And sadly, Howard, on the subject of time, I need to start playing some adverts, otherwise we'll have a whole load of them at the end of the programme, and I'm still new to this.
Big wages, you see, Phil, you've got to pay them.
Indeed. Well, thanks very much for your call.
Okay, thanks then. Take
Cheers.
care. Bye now.
Yes, and indeed, we had a rather, where are we now? Cynical. Yeah, cynical's the word from 862, text ending 862. It's never a quick one with Julian. You're going to let anyone else talk? Feels like this is the Julian Hour featuring the Manx public. Come on, boys. There's other people who wouldn't mind saying it how it is. We're getting pretty tired of hearing about all his facts on renewable. Tell him to write a manifesto for people who care. Well, to be fair, Julian wasn't on for that long, and whoever it was that was texting, perhaps they should call in. And there's plenty of opportunity for you to get dialing, because we're going to listen to some of these.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Bit of a Johnny Cash fan myself, so I love that Johnny Trash advert. Anyway, if there's anything on your mind this dinner time, 66 13 68 is the number to call. You can also text 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com. And we have 2 contradictory WhatsApp messages. The first from Steve. Fascinating to hear the usual climate change deniers suggesting they are against the wind turbines due to environmental reasons, yet completely fail to acknowledge the environmental damage from burning oil, coal and gas. So that's from Steve. And of course, Steve, one of the ways you could stop listening to the usual climate change deniers, if that's what they are, is by calling the programme yourself, 66 13 68. It would be great to hear from you. And then, of course, we have another WhatsApp message. Do not stop Julian and Juan from contributing to your programme, as they are the only people who talk sense. Also, for the record, I do not know either of them, and that's from Mary. So on the one hand and yet on the other. Anyway, we do have a caller on line 1 by the look of things, and I'm not sure who it is. Because I probably need to do something on a screen to find out. But, it's Bonzo. Yes, there we are. Okay, so Bonzo, what do you want to talk about? Presumably you're going to deny climate change for us, are you?
No, I do the absolute opposite, although I wouldn't use the term climate change because this is part of the confusion on these matters. The term like climate change and global warming, I think they were both invented by somebody early on in the George W. Bush administration, because it sounded like it described things, but it didn't frighten the horses or produce too much impetus for people to do anything.
Right.
Whereas what we have is climate damage.
And
the climate damage is by us.
Climate crisis is another one that I think...
Crisis, emergency. I mean, I could go on all day about the stuff, the fires that there have been in Chile, the absolute dousing that they've been getting in California, the absolute waving of temperatures outside any of their usual ranges all around the world, and now the issue of the Atlantic conveyor, of which the Gulf Stream is a part, breaking down. So,
and of course, it's not just the Gulf Stream, is it?
Ocean surface temperatures rising way above anything ever recorded, which, of course, was also generating our large procession of storms that we had last month. And now even NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in America.
I was thinking about the bakehouse.
Yes. No, another A on it.
Yeah.
Why haven't they given you any lunch yet?
No, I'm starving. Absolutely starving.
No niggles. Yes, I mean that was the thing about the budget program last year. No green room.
Well,
absolutely awful.
Times are hard, but anyway.
I know. Yes.
So in terms of all this, then,
should have brought your own sandwiches.
How do we resolve this? Because on the one hand, we've got Julian and to a certain extent Howard, who have said one thing. You're saying something completely different. How do we actually find a way in which we can bring some of these discussions to a central point that most people could agree on, do you think?
Well, I think one emphasis is money. This idea that a better world is going to be far more expensive and far more inconvenient. We have to do what is actually in the Climate Change Act, and that's work towards what's called a just transition, so that going away from fossil fuels to more renewables and also reducing our emissions are something that the cost of it is borne properly by society in total, rather than you as an individual having to spend lots more money and have your hard-pressed budget even more hardly pressed. So in doing that, we can then make a better, cleaner air and such like, less congested roads, warmer houses, lower fuel bills. Gosh, that's a bit weird and idealistic, but hey, why not give these strange ideas a go?
Have you got absolute confidence in the government to get this right?
I have confidence in various people who are within the system. Like people like Lizzie Riley, for example, who's been very, very knowledgeable. I believe she knows how to drive a nuclear power station, amongst other things.
Right. Gosh.
Well, yes, I think she used to be, one of the controllers at the one outside Edinburgh along the Scottish Torness. That was it. Yeah. And there are a variety of other people, who are around pressing for these things. But Unfortunately, the government is dictated by politics.
Indeed, and isn't that what you would expect?
And there are lots of loud shouting voices, as I'm sure you know, in your particular situation. There are lots of loud shouting voices who are shouting loudest.
Yeah. Well, sadly, we will have to curtail the call there because I've got some more adverts to take, and Betty has been waiting on the line very patiently for us. But I'll come to Betty as soon as we hear these.
When the Mannin Line's not on air, call Manx Radio to leave your opinion for broadcast on 682 631.
And every Monday and Friday at the end of the Mannin Line, we're digging into the Manx Radio archives to celebrate our 60th anniversary. Today at 12:55, John Moss will look back at the beginning of Manx Airlines in 1982. So that's to look forward to. Also, before we go to Betty, and it's only very brief, there was a text in. Many of your contributors are talking or always asking for more, like healthcare, road repairs, housing and benefits. All these services have to be paid for, but people are not prepared to pay for them. Government have to make a strong, hard decision, and that is to scrap the lower earnings limit on NI payments, increase NI contributions and raise tax. And that's from Pat, possibly not the most popular text that we'll have, but it'd be interesting to hear your views. Again, don't forget, you can call 66 13 68, text 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com. But, Pat, you have been waiting a little while, so good. Fast am I. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hi, Pat. Sorry, Betty. Betty. Pat was the texter, wasn't it? Sorry. Apologies.
I was a bit surprised there.
Yes, you would be.
I just came on to defend Julian and Ewan and Howard because they do a lot of the work that we can't be bothered or couldn't do in looking things up. And I think they don't go on too much. They're quite interesting. So I'm just defending them for coming on. And the guy who texted in, as you said, if he thinks they go on too long, he should come on himself. And apart from that, I actually think you shouldn't worry about pressing the odd button. I think you sound really lovely and you're doing a great job.
Oh, that's very kind of you. I've almost got it. There was just... if anyone is ever doing the Mannin Line, there's a thing with the fader, and if the fader's not down, which is effectively off, before you click the blue button or the yellow button at the top of the screen that allows the call to come on, then it doesn't work, as I've now discovered yet again. But hopefully tomorrow I'll have remembered. But thanks very much, Betty. I mean, what do you think of Bonzo's contribution?
I very rarely agree with Bonzo, I'm afraid. I just think he's rather arrogant, but that's just my opinion. Okay.
Okay, well, thanks very much. Anything else you want to talk to us about, or are we done?
Not at the moment. If I think of anything, I'll let you know.
Marvellous.
Okay,
well, you know the number, and it would be great to hear from you. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, so that was Betty, and Betty doing that thing that this show is all about, which is ringing up and talking. 66 13 68 66 13 68 is the number to call. Text 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com. And there's been loads of texts, as ever, with this show. We have... couple of WhatsApp messages. Hi, Phil. Can I remind Steve? Steve, of course, was supporting the green agenda. Can I remind Steve that the only byproduct of natural gas combustion is water vapour and carbon dioxide, the latter of which vegetation relies upon to survive and produce oxygen that we rely on. Also, water is quite important as well. So that's one WhatsApp message. Another WhatsApp message from Alex. I'm sure it won't be the Alex that will be coming on the program on the radio at 3:00. But Alex, I can't believe the huge section of the Groudle MER is being dug up again. Yet the road surface has only had about a £5 spent on it in the last 15 years, and that's from Alex. So then, looking at some of your texts. That was that one. Right, let's see. Please, can caller Eddie let us know how many wild birds are slaughtered each year on the Isle of Man by domestic cats compared to the estimate of the nearest wind pylon to his house? Well, it's not pylons. I think they're wind turbines rather than pylons. I'm not sure that pylons are noted for causing deaths of wild birds. But anyway, there we go. Cats certainly are prone to killing birds. Is there another WhatsApp message? I think I saw another one coming in. Yes. Do we think we could have a weekly show, perhaps on a Thursday, where we get all our top contributors, Howard and Julian, etc., in the studio for the full hour? I think they are a valuable asset to the Mannin Line, and that's from Matt in Port Erin. Well, of course, we could do it on a Thursday, but if anyone is entitled to call 66 13 68 any day of the week, and it's always good to hear from people. It's not quite as good for me reading out a whole load of text messages. It's far better to actually hear people's voices. That's one thing that radio sort of relies on. We've got another message here. Traffic accidents seem to be high at the moment. I hope everyone involved is okay. Are the police out and about, as I've seen some terrible driving this week? U-turns at Pulrose traffic lights, U-turns in full traffic at the bowling green, car abandoned on Alexander Drive, little green car, and then it gives the registration, but I won't read that out. Been there at least 2 weeks. Driver stopped at the end of a road on the wrong side. Douglas is becoming a little unsafe on our roads, and that's from texter ending 382. Well, of course, the one way to guarantee the roads are safer is people drive with the assumption that there might be something just around the corner. Or you should be able to stop. We've got another WhatsApp message. Could I just say I think Betty is adorable. I also concur with her views, and that wasn't me sending that WhatsApp message. But that was from. Can we do that? I'm not sure. The texter number begins 220. And we've got another caller on the line, it would appear. David, heavy vehicles and camper vans. Let's see, can I manage to get the technology right? Yes. David Quirk.
Mr. Gawne.
How you doing, bye?
Not bad at all.
Good.
Listen, I'm just wondering where Jeff Robinson is now. Is he still at the sea terminal?
He is I'm told he is the Deputy Chief Executive at the sea terminal now.
All right. I just wondered what happened to the consultation about what we call large vehicles, heavy goods vehicles, and in that category, camper vans. Do you remember years ago?
Yeah, absolutely.
Somewhere?
Well, there was a consultation went out recently to all the local authorities, and obviously I know that because I'm clerk to Aubrey and Russian, and that was basically it seemed a little bit like the department was putting the onus back onto the local authorities to solve the problem by introducing laws that banned the parking, but in residential areas, but it didn't actually come up with any solutions as to where these things could be parked instead.
I'm a little bit concerned now that we do have a number of what I call abandoned camper vans in various states of disrepair. But I can't get anywhere with them. But maybe you'll give me some advice as the next minister then. If a vehicle's on the highway and you think it is not roadworthy, what would you do?
I suppose you'd speak to the police, wouldn't you?
You would, and then the DOI, and if you draw it to their attention, wouldn't you think they'll liaise with one another?
You would hope so, yeah. Although, as you and I both know from our time in politics, particularly in our last term, the budgets were getting slashed, and the ability for all that sort of cross-departmental work that used to perhaps go on is much more difficult as a result of those reduced numbers of staffing.
Yeah, and the way the world is now, technology is the one, isn't it? So why aren't we introducing number plate recognition? It was starting to come in just before we left, and it's dried up. And the other issue is, how many government departments are not putting green initiatives on their buildings? Like all the schools, all the public buildings we got, the sea terminal. Is there anything on Manx Radio?
I'm not sure, but I do know that there is talk of putting solar panels on a number of government properties. I'm not sure whether that's actually going ahead now. It's certainly at the same time as the wind farm was being announced. There was talk at that stage of 10 megawatts of solar panels being put on a range of government properties. Yeah.
But Phil, isn't it all talk and we're not getting any action? Is that? And I'll leave you with that word.
Well, yes, and of course, hasn't that always been the case with government? Government loves to set up committees and do investigations and produce reports, and most of the reports have recommendations that suggest some other committee should be formed, and therein lies the problem. Anyway, good to talk to you, David.
Cheers, boy.
Cheers. Bye. Well, we only have 50 seconds to go, so I wonder, am I going to be able to read a few more of these texts? I probably managed to get a couple in. Some people are able to get thousands of pounds of benefit money fraudulently, and yet people desperately in need of assistance are scrutinised to the nth degree and then told they are entitled to nothing. Is this right? Well, of course, it's not right, is it? It's not fair. But generally, people who are fraudulently getting money out of the benefit system they've got a fair chance of getting caught. And what are your thoughts on the sewage pipe going into the sea in Peel? Well, actually, it doesn't really matter what I think. It's what you think. There's been a lot of talk on Facebook about this weekend, and some people are very unhappy. And with that... Yes, sadly, we are out of time, and I will be back tomorrow, and Wednesday, and Thursday, and Friday, which may or may not be a good thing. Thanks to Chris for producing, and particularly thanks to you for your company and contributions. I'll be back with tomorrow's Mannin Line, and remember, if you think of something you'd... I'm trying to pull a lever down and do something else at the same time. If you think of something else you want to talk about out of hours, 682 631 is the number. You can leave a message which may be played out on the show. Coming up next, it's Nanji's Tree with Christy D.
60 years serving you as the nation station. This is Manx Radio.
Manx Airlines was originally established in 1947, just 2 years after the Second World War, and flew, inter alia, the legendary Douglas C-47 Dakotas. There were a lot of Dakotas around at that time. Indeed, I flew in one with a team from King Bill's to a rugby match at St Bees. We landed at Carlisle. But in 1982 came a new Manx Airlines, a joint venture, founded by British Midland Airways and Air UK. Services started on the 1st of November 1982. The first flight was flown from here to Glasgow. 3 weeks after that launch, Geraldine Jameson spoke to the general manager, Terry Lydiard.
The money behind it is, as you know, 75% with British Midland and 25% British and Commonwealth, who own Air UK, who were the other major operator before we took over. But they have put the money up. We have the chairman of Manx Airlines is also the chairman of British Midland, Michael Bishop. But apart from that, we are totally independent. We decide ourselves how to run, what aircraft to run, frequency we operate. We're on our own in that way.
Well, I suppose it's an unfair question actually for you to answer, but where does Michael Bishop's loyalty lie then? Is it a bit of a conflict for him? British Midland Airways, the chairman of one company, and now Manx Airlines.
No, I can't see there's any conflict at all, because the areas in which the airlines operate just don't overlap. They're operating in entirely separate sectors of the aviation industry. And his interests are the same, as much as if Manx Airlines are profitable, British Midland get some of those profits. So that's no conflict of interest.
Well, why did you feel a need to set up a Manx Airlines?
The need wasn't on the side of the airlines. The need from the airlines was to stop operating into the Isle of Man on incurring the sort of losses which they had been previously. It was a question of what the airlines should do. And we found that both British Midland and AUK, working along entirely separate lines, had in fact reached the same conclusion that there was no way in which they could make money out of these routes. And both were very seriously considering a total withdrawal from the island. Certainly when each found out that the other was thinking along the same lines, the situation became fairly serious. Certainly would have been very serious for the island. And the directors of two companies got together and basically, what can we do about it to preserve the air services?
60 years serving you as the nation station. This is Manx Radio.